I have the pleasure of introducing our three guest speakers today. Randy Cheek is a licensed marriage and family therapist who has been in private practice in Sonoma County since 1983. Randy has been specializing in working with families who have been struggling with the impact of divorce. During the past 10 years, he has been active in the collaborative practice in Sonoma County. He is a past president of the board of directors of the Collaborative Council of the Redwood Empire and has served as a member of the board of directors of CCRE for 6 years. He has been a member of the board of directors of CP-CAL for 6 years and has served as president from 2011 to 2012. Randy has offered workshops through California, Florida, Canada, Hong Kong, and Europe. Additionally, he works as a collaborative coach and a child specialist and co-parenting counselor. Judith Sterling is a licensed certified public accountant since 1987 and a certified divorce financial analyst since 2005. Currently, Jude is past president of the Collaborative Council of the Redwood Empire. Currently, Jude is president of the Collaborative Council of the Redwood Empire, board member of Collaborative Practice Marin, and member of the following organizations: California Society of CPAs, Institute for Divorce Financial Analysts, Association of Divorce Financial Analysts, and the International Academy of Collaborative Professionals. She is past presenter of IACP and Collaborative Practice California conferences and at Continuing Legal Education of British Columbia Collaborative Training Vancouver. Her practice is limited almost exclusively to those in the Bay Area going through a mediated collaborative divorce. In 2014, she was honored with the Collaborative Practice California Eureka Award, which recognizes those who have made significant contributions to the collaborative practice in California. And finally, Amy Rodney is a certified family law specialist who works with families, individuals in mediation and collaborative process to bring the end of their marriages to a peaceful and respectful conclusion, keeping the needs of any children in the forefront. Amy also works with families, with children, in the role of minors counsel and the role of parent coordinator. Amy is a partner at the law firm of Connor Lawrence Rodney Olheiser? Olheiser. Okay, great. And Barrett, LLP. She has presented and been on many panels in the last 35 years. She has been the recipient of several legal honors during her career, and she has been on many court-related committees and has been on 2 nonprofit boards directors for the last 10 years. Let's welcome our presenters.
Patrick, thank you. So, Amy, Jude, and I have taken a 3-hour workshop and condensed it to the hour and a half that we have here for this morning. And this workshop is offered the second Saturday of every month at 9 o'clock at where we all have our offices at 829 Sonoma Avenue. If any of you want to attend the 3-hour workshop, you're invited, and it's free of charge. We encourage therapists to come, and we don't charge therapists because we feel like if the more informed you are, the better you're able to help your clients. So CP-CAL formed a committee to look at what we can do to educate the public about the options that they have as they're pursuing a divorce. And we'll go into more detail during this morning's presentation about what we mean by process options. But a quick overview is, one is for people to be able to do their own divorce that we refer to as kitchen table. The other is, traditional representation, litigation, and there's mediation, and then there's collaborative process. So we're going to ask you to hold your questions and comments for the end because we have a lot of material to get through. So the reason we put this together is that divorce is not just a legal process. It's an emotional process, it's a financial process. People's lifestyles change because of the financial impact of supporting 2 households with the same amount of money that they originally had. And as therapists, we all know people who have been through a divorce. Some of the people in the room may have already been divorced as well. We know the emotional toll that it takes on the individuals and the families. So one of the key questions that people have to ask themselves is, how do I want this to move forward? Do I want to be able to maintain relationships with my ex-partner's family? Do I want to be able to maintain friendships with neighbors, with our friends? Do we want to be able to go to our children's activities together? So these are questions that people have to think about before they decide on the approach that they're going to take. How much conflict do they want to risk exposing the children to? This is crucial, and I'll talk about this more a little bit later. So we have a team in collaborative process that will address both the legal issues, the emotional issues as they pop up, as well as the financial issues. In all of the approaches, people can obtain can find different ways of getting some of the same material, but it could be fragmented. In the model that we'll be talking about, it's a more cohesive approach. So as I said, it's not just, there we are. So it's not just merely a legal process. I said that, now let's move on. So the divorce is a transition for the families, and how people navigate this transition is crucial. We've sometimes had people coming into these classes that they might be on their second divorce and they realize that they wanted to do it differently than they did the first divorce. Or maybe their lives have become more complex because they're older and they have more assets that have to be divided up, and maybe the first divorce they didn't have children, now they do. So we want to be able to make sure that we are able to help people. Now, well, a little bit later I'm going to be talking about the 6 stages of change that people go through, and it was a model that was developed for dealing with addictions or behavior change. It's also a model that's very applicable to helping people go through the change that is required as they go through a divorce.
So I'm going to talk for just a couple minutes about what happens in the court system when there are children in a family, and whether somebody settles their own case outside of court or goes to court, there's always a need for what we call a parenting plan. And a lot of therapists work out parenting plans for couples that they're seeing. Some are specially trained to do that kind of work. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. But the parenting plan can be as general or as specific as the family needs. So if there's a lot of conflict, the more specific, the better. If there's less conflict and they can agree on things, then it can be a more general plan. But it will generally contain things like who has legal and physical custody, what the schedule is for parenting time, holidays, vacations, communication, travel, and a number of other things. But those are things that are typically in a parenting plan. What happens when people can't resolve things on their own, one or the other parent files what we call a request for order with the court, and they're immediately sent to family court services, which is a mediation process. They only have about an hour, hour and a half with the mediator, and then the mediator actually in Sonoma County makes a recommendation to the judge about what should happen. This often happens early on in the process, and what's supposed to be a temporary solution often turns into a more permanent solution, but not always. So, other ways that children and parenting issues are dealt with, most of these involve therapists in some form or another, are co-parenting counseling. So the parents meet together with a single co-parenting counselor to help them figure out who's going to have Christmas or who's going to take their daughter to prom or whatever the issue might be. Or we also have what we call the high conflict co-parenting project, which Randy is a part of. And that's for people who can't do this even with one co-parenting counselor, so they each have their own co-parenting counselor, and then the 4 people meet together to try to resolve these kind of conflicts. We also have situations where either somebody is estranged or there's been some what we'll call active gatekeeping, which Randy's going to talk about a little more detail after I'm done with this piece. And so there's another piece that we call reunification counseling. And again, there are some specially trained therapists who do reunification counseling. And what they do is they meet with the parent who is kind of the out parent, and then they meet with the child who often has his or her own therapist, and they begin to bring them together and to work on the issues that are keeping that child from wanting to spend time with the other parent, with that parent. A lot of people are starting to think of it more in terms of family systems and involving the other parent, which personally I think is a great idea because it's almost never, in my experience, just one parent that's creating a situation like that. So in those cases that are really difficult and can't be resolved through any of the other methods of resolution, they will go to what we call a custody evaluation. These are done by psychologists with special training who interview the children, interview the parents, do psychological testing on both, and write extensive reports making a recommendation on who should have parenting time, how it should be divided. They often deal with controversial subjects like whether someone should get to move, or if they move, should the child or children go with them or stay here. So things are usually very high conflict by the time they get to that point. Another process that's available is something called a parent coordinator, which is like a judge as to custody matters, but there are limits, and the parents have to agree to appoint this. The court cannot order it, but a parent coordinator can make a lot of decisions, and there's actually the parent coordinator's authority is spelled out in an agreement signed by the parents about exactly what they can decide, and it can be all kinds of things. I've had to decide whether kids are going to get flu shots or not, whether a parent's time is going to increase by even 1 day a month, or if there's a conflict over understanding the schedule, trying to clarify that. So parent coordinators can be either attorneys or mental health professionals. The other thing that is important for parent coordinators is to work with the therapists who are involved, either the therapists for the individual parents or the therapists for the children. So it's really important to have a team effort because, again, if you only are seeing one side of the story, which as an attorney you do if you only have one client, and as therapists, if you only have one client, you're only hearing one part of the story, and it's very easy to buy into everything that person tells you and to make judgments and even, at times, diagnoses of the person you've never met. And so we hear that back from the clients. Oh, my therapist told me that my husband is a narcissist, and I've looked it up, and here's what it means, and it's perfect. And so it's something to be really careful about in our practices, both attorneys and therapists.
So when Amy mentioned the parent coordinator, that's a really challenging position. I've done a few cases as parent coordinator, and after doing 2 and having a complaint filed against me because I made a ruling that the parent didn't like, I thought, that's something I don't want to do anymore. I don't need to defend my license. That was about 15 years ago, and occasionally I'm asked if I want to do that again, and now you just say, no way, find somebody else. I will work with your parent coordinator. I want to do the co-parenting. I'd like to go home and sleep at night. These are families who are in the utmost of upheaval. And as therapists, we're usually pulled into that. So we might be seeing an individual client who's considering a divorce, and they might ask us to write letters for them regarding their custody. So a quick show of hands. Who's ever been asked to write a letter? Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Now, show of hands. Who has written a letter? Okay. Dangerous. That's like being on a slippery slope without an ice axe. Is if you write a letter making a recommendation about custody, we're actually, I remember Dave Jensen talking about this, we're practicing outside the scope of our practice unless we're a 730 custody evaluator. So in the future, unless you're a custody evaluator, decline the invitation. It's a good way to be able to stay in practice a long time. We want to do things. We want to be able to be an advocate for our clients. And the best way for us to be an advocate for the clients is to help them hold the emotional state that they're in, to provide them with the empathy that they need while they're going through this, to be attuned to them, to be able to be present and acknowledge what's going on for them. And if we start doing advocacy work for them within the court system, then we're venturing into an area where there could be huge disappointment and some pretty strong transference. So it's material that we really have to carefully process. So the material I'm going to be going over is, you can ignore the slides, we're not going to be using them. I hate PowerPoint. I will, if you want me to repeat a reference, quick hand up and I'll repeat the reference. So one of the things, when I have people who start to talk about divorce, and they're taking steps to initiate a divorce, I ask them, what message do they want to give to the children? And if I can have an ideal situation, it's before anybody's actually started any legal action, and I could have both parties in the room together. And then what I do with the parents is I have them develop a public service announcement. Excuse me. So this brief PSA, there are two components. One is, what do they want to say to their children? What message do they want to give to the kids? Can they give a message that, Mommy and Daddy don't feel like boyfriend and girlfriend anymore? That was a statement a friend of mine gave to his children when they were 8 and 11, and his sons got it immediately. And they said, but we still love each other. We love you too. We want to make sure you're okay. We're going to be taking care of you. We're going to be friends. We're going to come to all of your events. You'll spend time at each of our houses. What children want to know is, are they going to continue to see mom and dad? Where will they live? Are they going to have a bedroom? Are they going to have a comfortable pillow to sleep on at night? Where are they going to school? Will they be able to stay in touch with their friends? Will they be able to stay on their teams or any of the activities that they're involved in? They want to know that mom and dad will do everything they can to make sure that there's a soft landing pad for them. What kids don't want to hear is the conflict. They've already seen enough of that. So one public service announcement is, what are you saying to your kids? And then I take it further. When? Where? What do your children like to do? What do you as a family like to do? I had a family once who, they liked kayaking in Tamales Bay, so the parents organized a kayaking trip with a picnic, and they went out and they found this little secluded beach, and they talked with the children about getting a divorce, and after they all cried together, they got back on their kayaks, paddled back, and mom took the kids home, the dad went to a beach house they had, and it was a wonderful way for them to tell the kids. Another family planned a barbecue. And the kids are very athletic, so they played soccer in the backyard, they had their food, parents sat them down, and they read from the script, and then they pulled out art supplies so that everybody could draw how they were feeling. So these were things that the other therapist and I were able to work with them on how are you going to prepare your children for this. With very young children, I encourage people to have a copy of the book, the children's book, When Dinosaurs Divorce. It's a great book. And there are other books that are even more current than that, but Dinosaurs Divorce is geared for very young children. It's a picture book, and it shows a dinosaur family going from mom and dad arguing through their divorce to dating new people and remarrying. It's a wonderful opportunity for parents to be able to read. I encourage parents to each have a copy of it at their home and to read it to the children. I've heard reports of children bringing the book out and giving it to the parents. Please read it to me. The other public service announcement that I have parents put together is one that they're going to send out either by email or by snail mail to family and friends. And what it says is, this is just a quick example. We're going through a divorce. We haven't been happy. We want to continue to have your love and support. We want our children to continue to have your love and support. We want you to be aware that there are going to be times where we're distracted, where we might not be friendly to each other, but we want you to be able to support our whole family. As you think about it, how oftentimes have you seen people pick sides in the divorce? Or one party asking all of their friends, will you write a declaration to the court on behalf of me having custody of the children? And so friends and family members start writing these declarations, which is then looked at by the other parent as an attack on them, on their character, and then it divides the community. Hillary Clinton wrote that great book, It Takes a Village. And if we destroy the village, we're impacting the kids. And we have to stop doing that. So if there's a divorce rate of 50% in California, every child knows somebody in his class or her class that has gone through their parents' divorce. So then that trauma that that child has in the classroom is now telegraphed out to their classmates. And now if other kids in the class know little Susie's parents divorced and my parents are arguing, are they going to divorce? I heard a talk on NPR recently, and it said that even though we have a 50% divorce rate, about 90% of the population of California is impacted by divorce. That's a pretty substantial number. So, some interesting statistics. Joan Kelly, who was probably one of the world's leading researchers on the effects of divorce on family, practiced and did research. She practiced in Corte Madera, and she did research all around the world. And every year she would do a training workshop, and I think I went to about 7 or 8 of them. And at one of them, she was talking about, specifically about the impact of divorce on children. And she asked children, and she estimated that she maybe had interviewed 10,000 children. I think that's a significant population. I think we can extrapolate from that there's some really accurate stats here. 23% of the children said, nobody said anything. Think about that. You're a child. You come home from school, and one parent's not there. They're not there for dinner. They're not there to put you to bed. You notice that their clothes are gone, and nobody says anything. Suddenly dad comes to pick you up or mom comes to pick you up, and you're going to the other parent's house, but nobody says what's going on. 23%. 44% said only mom spoke about the divorce. Pathetic statistic is only 17% said both parents. When I heard these statistics, I took this on as a mission statement for me, to see if I could get this 17% up into the 70s, 70%, 80% range as far as people who I work with. And I hope that some of you take that mission statement on too. 5% of the children she spoke with said they felt informed about what happened. 5%. 45% said they heard a statement or two. One of the most significant events in children's lives, a statement or two. When I heard these statistics during the break at one of Joan's workshops, an attorney who I knew from around the Bay Area said, well, that was kind of like what happened with me. She said, I came home from school, there was a moving van in front of the house, and things were being taken out, and I ran in to make sure my bedroom was okay, and then she saw the family car out in the backyard, and she couldn't figure out how the car was in the backyard. Well, it was driven through a fence. And she saw her dad pouring a liquid on the car, and you could fill in the blank of what Dad did to the car. You know, sound traumatic? Some horrible things. And this was about 50 years ago. Some horrible things happened during the divorce. There's a statement that in criminal court, people see the defendants, some of the worst people on their best behavior. In family court, we see some of the best people exhibiting their worst behavior. Going through a divorce, we see a lot of people exhibiting some of their worst behavior. So one other interesting tidbit that I heard from Joan is that when children go through a divorce, they potentially go through 4 other significant separations or divorces. And those 4 other people could be one of the parents' new significant others who they met, but the relationship didn't last. Amy and I were working with a family once. They had twins, and I got involved well after the divorce, but there was a custody dispute going on. And these 13-year-old twins, boy and a girl, I was talking with them about this change in custody that was pending, and the boy said, he said, I'm not surprised. He said, my mom's had a lot of boyfriends, and all of them lived with us. One of them rode dirt bikes, and I learned how to ride a dirt bike. And then my mom broke up with him, and I never rode a dirt bike again. But then she got into this relationship with a guy who was a surfer. And I really loved surfing. He even bought me my own surfboard, my own wetsuit. But then they broke up. And then my mom had this guy, and he did this with me. Well, you know the story. And now she's in a new relationship, and this guy's a chef, and he's teaching the boy knife skills and how to carve meat and how to prepare vegetables. And he said, I'm afraid to get connected. These are significant upheavals. Things like this destroy children's ability to become resilient adults. And as therapists, I think it's important that we do whatever we can to help make sure that the parents that we're working with who are going through divorce are able to provide kids with the resilience, opportunities to develop resilience that they need. Now, sometimes we have to deal with issues around intimate partner violence or alcohol or drug abuse. And when we have situations like that, it's important that those messages be transparent and to be communicated to the children in a loving and transparent way. And that's when I refer to this gentleman who I've known for a long time, Michael Krikorian, because he has a little bit of experience in the area of addictions. And so I'll frequently talk with Michael or other colleagues about how they would handle things and help coach parents on how to deliver a message that's not filled with shame and blame about the other parent, but that can still allow the children to have a loving relationship with that parent. So I mentioned 6 stages of change. 3 therapists at the University of Rhode Island, I have their last names, Proshaka, Norcross, and DiClementi, developed a model of change called the Transtheoretical model of change. It talks about the 6 stages of change. The first stage is pre-contemplation. Clients may be unhappy with what's going on. They might feel dissatisfied in some ways, but they don't have a thought about what they would change. They're not actually thinking about change. They're just in this flat-line place. Usually during this pre-contemplation stage, there's a wake-up call of some kind. There's something that kind of sparks their attention, and then they might move into the contemplation change. This is where they actually start thinking about making change. So when we think about clients and they're maybe in a relationship that's not working, that feels flat, there's no love, there's just disconnection, you know, they might think, well, this is just life. Maybe when the kids will grow up, then we can renew our relationship as empty nesters. Well, some people do and some people don't. It's a long time to delay gratification. When people move into the contemplation change stage, they start looking at, wait a minute, this isn't working for me, we need help, and maybe they come into our offices to start doing some couples counseling, or maybe someone joins a support group, or maybe they come to the divorce options class just to see what else might be out there. Then they start making significant plans in their head about what might happen next. They may become aware that some of Gottman's four horsemen are existing in the relationship, that the criticism, contempt, defensive,ness, and stonewalling that I see almost every day in my practice. At the small table, we were talking, and I mentioned to my colleagues at that table, about 95% of my practice is working with divorce. The other 5%, I keep working with either healthy individuals or couples who want to keep their relationship going, just so I could keep myself grounded that there is an alternative space in the world. The third stage is preparation. This might be when someone's in individual therapy, talking with their therapist about leaving the relationship. They might be talking about, how will I introduce this topic to my partner? Where will I talk with my partner? Or they might actually be meeting with an attorney and to begin to develop the strategies for moving forward with filing for a divorce. It's not unusual. One of the things I've seen so many times is that one person is in the action stage and the other person is in still pre-contemplation. And when that person finds out, it's upheaval. And depending upon who they are, it might be, okay, I can wrap my head around this, or it might be that incredible, you know, narcissistic wound that gets triggered and the person becomes immediately ready to go jump into planning stage and fight as hard as they can, as much as possible, to get what they want during the divorce. Fifth stage is maintenance. This is when people are moving along, and so Amy, Jude, and I have seen people who are in that fifth stage where they're maintaining the separation and divorce.
What's the fourth stage?
Fourth stage, action. So action, did I skip that? Yes, no? Okay, so action stage, they're maybe reading books about divorce, they're consulting friends who have divorced, they're going to divorce options class, they're talking with their therapists, they're taking active steps. I've had people come in and they would list off like a half dozen books that they've read, you know, about divorce as a way of getting ready for it. And I might be their first port of contact as far as who they're meeting with. So the fifth stage is maintenance, where the clients are working together on finalizing the divorce. And depending upon which process option they choose, this is a place where people might all of a sudden say, hold on, wait a minute, do we really want to go through with this? I've had some collaborative cases that we were in the stage of finalizing the financial picture, finalizing the custody. One of the children had ADD that was undiagnosed, and the child specialist picked it up. We got the kid to an ADD specialist. Parents came in one day and with the other therapist and me said, you know, we've never had a budget. We've never had a plan for taking care of our kid. Our communication's better. We're stopping the divorce. They reconciled. So the fifth stage, depending on the model, now if they're in litigation and they have their attorneys hammering each other, highly unlikely, but this is a stage where people might give second thought to, do they really want to move forward with this? The last stage is completion. And in the divorce world, that's having a signed marriage settlement agreement, an agreement about how they're going to move together how they're having a parenting plan that Amy talked about, or you'll hear from Jude in a little bit about how they've divided up assets and debts. They may have a plan about what they've done with all the household goods. But one of the things that I see frequently is that even though they have a marriage settlement agreement, if they've gone to litigation, they still haven't resolved some of the conflict between the two of them. And it could be because of what they're hearing from the children. Children have this amazing ability to try to keep a container intact, to make sure that their needs are being taken care of. So they'll go to one parent and say, oh, you cook the best food for me. And they might say to the other parent, you really helped me with my homework. But what they'll say to the parent that they're with is that you're the better parent. I feel more secure here. I feel more taken care of here. And then the parents look at this as ammunition that I'm the better parent. I should be the one who has the children more of the time. And so there's another filing with the court system, and they're back in court, at family court services like Amy mentioned, and they're getting ready to go back before the judge to have the custody changed. And the sad thing about custody disputes is they could go on until the children are 18. Even though there's a signed marriage settlement agreement, they can't revisit finances, but they can sure as hell refight over the kids. When children have this dual story that they tell, that one parent is that they say to the parent they're with that you're the good parent, they may not be saying that the other parent is bad, but they don't say anything positive about that other parent. Kids feel like they have to be loyal to the parent that they're with. And there's a psychologist in Sacramento wrote a paper on that, and he referred to that as the child's paradox. Love both parents, but I have to say that I'm loyal and loving to the parent that I'm with to make sure my needs are being met. Parents often misconstrue that. I've had parents come into co-parenting sessions saying, Billy says I'm the better parent, and the other parent says, no, Billy says I'm a good parent. Truth is, you're probably both adequate parents. So I've had children come in. I've asked the parents, can I talk with your children 1 or 2 times? And one of the handouts you have is the divorce rules. I use the divorce rules when I meet with kids. I tell kids, you get graded in school all the time. Somebody gives you A through F, depending on your performance in the classroom. I'm going to ask you to grade your parent on these 20 points, and I'm going to keep track of the grades, and I'm not going to tell your parents what the grades were. And so when I then meet with the parents, I'm able to say to the parents, you're both C parents, you need to improve your game. We have to focus here on how to up your game. I've had parents where the kids gave them D's and F's. And then I took a harder stand and I said, some of this is bordering on neglect of your children. And if this neglect continues, I'll be contacting CPS. Parents have to be able to pay attention to the children's needs, and they need to get that the other parent might not be doing things your way, but they're doing it their way, and it might be adequate for the kids. When it comes to divorce, about 20 to 25% of the families are able to navigate divorce relatively peacefully. It doesn't mean they don't have disagreements. They have disagreements, but they're able to work out the disagreements. Twenty to 25% of the families have high conflict, where they're actively engaged in disputes. Poor communication, messages being sent but not responded to, one parent getting the homework on Monday, but the Wednesday parent doesn't gets the kids and the homework wasn't done, and it's due in on Friday. So there's setting up the other parent for failure. So low cooperation, high distrust, difficulty with decision making. These folks can respond fairly well from co-parenting. Then there are the folks who are in what we refer to as the intractable conflict. These are people who have difficulty being in the same room. These are people who want to hold the children back from the other parent. This is where we find kids in restrictive gatekeeping. In cooperative co-parenting, there's facilitative gatekeeping, and there are handouts about gatekeeping that I hope you've picked up. Facilitative gatekeeping happens even when babies are born in intact families. You know, the moms might be nursing the baby, and and the dad might be wanting to hold the baby, but mom's saying, no, I'm feeding the baby. It's restrictive gatekeeping, but it's healthy gatekeeping. Restrictive gatekeeping, especially when there's divorce, is not getting the kids to go to the other parent's house. Enabling the kids to resist going to the other parent's house. This refuse-resist dynamic in the 70s was called the Alienated Child Syndrome by Richard Gardner. And then in the 80s, people said, no, there's no syndrome. And then in the 90s, they started referring it, no, it was the alienated parent, I'm sorry, parental alienation. Then it became the alienated child in the 90s. Now we refer to it as a refuse-resist dynamic. And with kids who refuse to go to one parent or the other, flat out refuse. And we have parents who don't get kids to the exchanges. And this is when we bring people like the high conflict co-parenting program, and again, there's a handout back there that describes that.